Joshua Oppenheimer's The Act of Killing documents the efforts of a group of small-time gangsters in Indonesia to reenact, through cinematic genres, their roles as executioners in the 1965 to 66 government-sponsored killings of so-called communists. These gangsters boast about their involvement in the murders and seize the opportunity to recreate their violent past in all their graphic and, in their words, sadistic detail. Several books could be written about the ethical questions on display in the documentary, but they basically break down into three categories. Ethics relating to 1. The killers who appeared in the film, 2. The role the film has played or will play in Indonesian society, and 3. The role that murder plays, or doesn't play, in films and our everyday lives. As for the first issue, the obvious question is, should admitted mass murderers like Congo and Zulkadri be given a forum like this? For Zulkadri, the film appeared to have no impact on him. He was the same grim, emotionless man throughout the proceedings. But Congo was clearly affected by the filmmaking process. Still, it must be very difficult for his victims' children and grandchildren to see him become a movie star, based on the horrible acts he committed, while 90-year-old Nazis are still being hunted down and put on trial for similar crimes. The counterpoint is the argument that it is always better to know your enemy. It is educational to know that mass murderers don't have to be hollow, robotic Terminator types. They can act and look just like your friendly neighbour. The film's impact on Indonesian society was clearly on Zulkadri's mind during the filming. Zulkadri said the film would probably change the entire narrative of his country's history. He says Indonesians have been taught that the communists were cruel and needed to be destroyed. He says that acting out these murders will show the right-wing executioners were actually the cruelest. A society that has been overtaken using violence instead of democracy will influence and create a certain type of person. Anwar and his acquaintances of genocide were created by a military that not only allowed them to kill, but gave them monetary benefit. As gangsters who idolized the brutally violent behavior of the typical American gangsters of Hollywood films, it's not surprising that killing came so easy to them in their youthful days in the 1960s. A theory that highlights how society could produce people with a nonchalant attitude to mass murder comes from Dreams and Dead Ends, the American gangster film. It states, in the gangster/crime film, meanings emerge, whether deliberately or not, about the nature of society and the individuals it creates. The society that Adi and Anwar are part of influenced the crimes of both of them, though the aftermath in their old age has affected them both differently. Anwar's life now isn't as relatable to the films he was once inspired by. In the gangster genre of films, you rarely see a man who is haunted and openly retching at the thought of crimes he has committed. It's clear that Anwar's moral code was shattered by his own greed when he was given a life of financial stability, power, and notoriety by his government at the cost of doing their dirty work and slaughtering suspected communists. From talking openly about what he's done and reenacting the crimes, it's clear that slowly he is coming to terms with the damage he has done to people's lives, including his own. In contrast to that, Adi expresses that killing is the worst crime you can do, so the key is to find a way to not feel guilty. It's all about finding the right excuse. In his mind, if you can find a way to distance yourself from the reality with a self-convincing reason, then you will not feel guilty. Throughout the film, the only worry he has is about how the film will portray what they did, and how people's opinions could change 180 degrees. Unlike Anwar, who is having a battle facing how immoral he has been in the past, Adi is emotionally hollow to the things he has done. He is more relatable to the fictitious ideal ending to an American gangster film, where he has not been held accountable for his crimes and still alive. Towards the end of The Act of Killing, Anwar allegedly claims to feel empathetic for those he's responsible for murdering. However, like Oppenheimer, we are forced to challenge his sincerity. In Julak Lee and Kwai Chan's study, Serial Murder, an exploration and evaluation of theories and perspectives, they determine that criminal behavior is the outcome of factors internal to the physical body of the individual human. Consequently, offenders do not have control over their violent and aggressive behaviors, and they are of a nature that acts in such a way. If this theory is in fact true, how can we begin to imagine that criminals that have committed the volume of atrocities that Anwar has can generally understand the consequences of his actions? Oppenheimer questions him here by informing him that they in fact felt worse than he ever will. He ensures our inquisition throughout the remainder of the film, almost exposing him by displaying idiosyncratic behavior, such as the retching on the roof. This exemplifies the style of Oppenheimer's filmmaking as he continued. In his follow-up, the look of silence, he similarly unmasks the behavior of a family, almost to the extent of humiliation. He questions them if they knew the massacrist behavior of their father and husband, and he does this in front of the son of one of the victims. As they continue to claim ignorance, he quickly disproves them. Like the act of killing, he displays these people situated in such a horrendous situation, their struggles, following and regardless on them if they are actually responsible, their inability to take responsibility. This brings us back to the concept of empathy. If the families of those at fault can't understand and respect the struggles of the victims' loved ones, it is seemingly unlikely that Anwar could ever feel that empathetic for the thousands of lives he ended. Juror for the Puma Creative Impact Award, Morgan Spurlock, says there's real power in a documentary, and there's real power in movies to begin with. Movies transcend culture, they transcend countries, and to be able to have something that can create global awareness is necessary. Oppenheimer definitely achieves this. He brings light to a piece of history that us as a Western audience were mostly unaware of, but the impact that he intended is one that is more concentrated. As Errol Morris, who acted as an executive producer on the film, writes, Oppenheimer is not offering a historical account of what happened in Indonesia, but rather an examination of the nature of memory and of history. Although he was aware of the impact it would have on Indonesian culture, I believe that he was concerned more with the individual impact that these atrocities would cause on the human psyche, and by doing this, the film has a more resounding effect on the viewer, leading to them ultimately caring more about the conflict than if it had just simply been an informative piece documenting the crimes committed during that time. Being able to see the real people who were affected by and participate in the killings gives the audience a point of reference for the figures and statistics about the violence, allowing them to more easily comprehend the incredible numbers of the genocide. With the influx of informative pieces being made about the countless number of terrible acts that are committed on a daily basis in the world, we have become almost desensitized to all this evil that is enacted, and almost need something to stand out amongst all the darkness. Oppenheimer does this by delivering the information in a uniquely individual and personal way. I can't think of another occasion where I've been able to see the perpetrators of such acts in such an honest and raw way. Obviously, the performances given on camera are exactly that, performances, and literally cannot be natural, but by being allowed such up-close and visceral access to these terrible people, we are allowed deeper into an aspect of humanity that hopefully not many of us have experienced, thus allowing us to more easily picture and identify with their victims. We see relatives and victims confront the men responsible for their deaths, and the men who killed them watching their own reactions of the events that happened. These types of methods hold so much more weight than a person just describing what they did. The human brain physically cannot comprehend what it doesn't understand. We literally cannot imagine the pain of the thousands of people affected by Anwar's killings, as the majority of us have never even experienced the pain of one of these people. But being put directly into the participant's mind frame, Oppenheimer allows us to, at least, get a glimpse at their torment. The act of killing tells a powerful story about one of the most devastating times in Indonesian history, and Oppenheimer tells this tale in such a unique way. He powerfully presents the brutal reality, the inhumanity towards man, and dwells into the details of the lives involved. He also highlights questions and debates that don't only appear significant in Indonesian culture, but affect the difficulty the entirety of the world we were born in. It's a fantastic documentary that will have an impact for years to come.